And wisdom is what we use to take facts, which by themselves are meaningless, right?
Yes.
And turn it into usable information. If you don't have access to wisdom, then you just take the facts and you arrange them according to this theory, and then somebody comes along and writes another PhD, and he arranges them according to this theory, and then you fight about it. Right? I remember when the universe was 20 billion years old. I know I don't look that old, but the fact is, as I was growing up, the latest theory was the universe was 20 billion years old. And then I was old enough to have been at university when somebody discovered they'd miscalculated the Hubble constant. And when they reinserted that into the theory, the universe went from 20 to 10 billion years old. Now you had two camps, right? The 20 billion year old astronomers and the 10 billion year old astronomers. Now guess what they did next? They met and they had a conference, and all of a sudden, by the 1990s, the universe was 15 billion years old. Now, doesn't this sound like a search for truth to you? Right, really, it's just a compromise argument. And in fact, I did a debate against a physicist from Cambridge University, Dr. John Polkinghorne, and he publicly stated in the 1990s that the universe was 15 billion years old, but on the evening of my debate recently in Liverpool University, he said the universe was 14 billion years old. And I had to remind the audience of the humour of this, that in the 15 years since 1990, John Polkinghorne's got 15 years older, while the universe has got 1 billion years younger. So that none of these things are actual truth at all. So the first thing you need to do in establishing a Christian view of education is to realise that there's no facts, no truth which contradicts anything in Christianity. But there's plenty of the latest theories that disagree with everything in Christianity. But that's irrelevant. So therefore you need, first of all, the big picture. The big picture is God has actually told us the framework for truth. Inside of that, you can have lots of ways to investigate what the actual facts are, and then using God's wisdom, find a way to turn them into useful information, so that you were referring to America and the West giving us usable information.
Exactly.
Okay, so you have a look at our rockets to the moon. Now, we had to assume before we sent a rocket to the moon that whatever gravity was like on Earth, it was like on the moon. Now, we'd never been to the moon before. Now, why would we make the assumption? Because if you like Doctor Who or all the other science fictions, there could be a black hole there. We could have different rules, right? Any possible assumption is okay in theoretical physics. Why would we assume that whatever happens to an astronaut on Earth is what will happen to him on the moon? Well, do you know the word we use to describe the whole of everything you can see? Isn't it universe?
Yes.
Okay, what's the word universe mean?
Something that is bound to that unit, that one.
One, okay. Why do we have a universe? Answer, because there is one God who has made one creation, and it's based on Him. He has one set of laws, because He's a unity. He is the one, right? So when you have a look at this creation, we even use words like universe, and therefore if God made the earth and God made the moon, the rules will be the same. Whew. Fortunately for Werner von Braun, who by the way was a creationist,
yes, sir,
they had the same rules, so we shouldn't be surprised that the first book ever read publicly on the moon was Genesis chapter 1, because that was the philosophy of education, the big picture, which enabled us to take the facts of hydrogen burning and oxygen goes boom, and we'll move something to end up on the moon and discover more information. So that's the connection. And of course, coming out of the space things, don't you have non-stick fry pans now and non-stick pots and pans that are much easier to clean? Well, that all came out of the space race, okay? And all of our nice little digital watches and computers, they are all a consequence of the benefit of somebody saying, there is a God who made the world will therefore behave uniformly because God never changes.
I had a short forum discussion with some evolutionist biology students, and one of them kept writing the facts of evolution. And I dared to answer him saying, listen, it's so far your bravest ones are talking about theories. You talk about facts of evolution. Should we rather stay with the theory of evolution? This is widely accepted. John, I got the answer back. plain sophisticated sophism. Yes, you're right. Evolution is a theory, but the theory of evolution is a fact. End of discussion, I said. My dear friend, you just caught me to the corner. Thank you so much. End of argument.
Well, it's certainly a piece of sophistry, because I did a debate in Wales last Saturday, right? And the atheist scientist, biologist who I was debating got up to introduce the subject in exactly that way. He said, now, the word theory in your mind means just a guess, but we scientists use theory in the same way as we use fact, right? So therefore, they've talked themselves into this, right?
Unbelievable.
But I love to remind people, in fact, you remember I said I've just recently been at St Andrews University, and prior to my coming, a week before, Richard Dawkins, you know, the arch nemesis of anybody who believes in creation and one of the most virulent anti-Christian, antagonistic speakers you could have in biology, was there. And of course, in order to prepare for my talk, I thought, well, he's been there a week before, I'm going to have to read up, find anything I can on this man, what he's saying now. And as part of that research, Dr. Diane Eager, who does a fair bit of research for us, actually found one of his interviews on PBS TV, right, in the UK. And just at the end of last year, he's asked by the interviewer, now, is evolution a theory or a fact? And Dawkins replies, evolution has been observed. It just hasn't been observed while it's been happening, right? And I thought, that's beautiful, right? Now, that's an example of sophistry. But of course, if something hasn't actually been observed while it's been happening, then it hasn't been observed no matter how loud you say it, right? And you know the old politician's rule, if you've got a weak argument, shout some, right? And that's basically what he did. But it's sophistry, it's not truth. It's sophistry, it's not wisdom. It's sophistry, it's not even science. Because science is based on what's observable. And the reason for that is that when particularly Christianity began to penetrate man's brains, the Bible is one book which actually says, prove all things, right? And I do wish many Americans would do that when they watch some of their religious TV, because much of it is rubbish. But the reality is the Bible is the book which is the scientist's inspiration. So we shouldn't be surprised that many of the leaders in all fields of science, whether it's Gregor Mendel in genetics with a Christian worldview, or whether it's you know, some of the famous chemists or biologists like Carl von Linné, they all had a creation Christian worldview.
Is evolution a reason to believe Christianity or a reason to believe what? Could you please sort out this mess for me?
Okay. When you look at you and me, right, we live today. Now, if you can imagine there being life in outer space and a spaceship from Mars with little blue men arrived right here in this studio, not only would we be famous, right, because we caught it on the cameras, but in reality, those little blue men would say, I wonder what these are. How old are they? Okay, now, because they have never seen us grow, they would look at the data. There are big people, there are little people, and they may very well come up with a theory that as people age, they finally get so small till they go back inside somebody else, right, and disappear. Because that's possible from the data, if they were just here in an instant. Okay, now, you and I live in this present world, and we can be here long enough to say, no, it's not like that. Mum gets pregnant, and 9 months later, a little baby is born, and then it turns into an old man because I've watched it. Okay, so time and age is something you must experience, not something you can theorize about. Okay, now, the problem with people like Hugh Ross and many astronomers and that is they're standing in the present and they're trying to come up with an age for the universe about a time in the past when they can't get to.